Pink. Blue. No. Pink. Blue. No. Pink. Blue. Pink. Blue. Pink. Blue. Pink. Blue. Pink.
Both. Today we're going to be talking about Disney's 1959 Sleeping Beauty. We're going to be seeing how historically plausible that movie was. I rewatched it from start to finish, realized that it's a lot shorter than I remember from in my childhood, and I wrote a ton of notes. I'm a Virgo. First of all, after rewatching that movie, I want to make one thing entirely, completely
clear.
Those fairy godmothers carried that whole movie on their backs. Those women did everything, and I mean everything, in that movie. The fairy godmothers were the main characters. And you'll see that if you rewatch the movie, which I recommend. Alrighty then, let's get started. The movie opens to this zoom in of a beautiful illuminated script. I just did a tiny replica because I'm a nerd and I wanted one. It opens the inside of the book and the narrator starts narrating. The art is also gorgeous. So far, it's looking really colorful, and I'm going to emphasize this a lot during this video probably, but the Middle Ages were really colorful. A lot of Hollywood movies and TV shows that are set in medieval times portray the medieval times as gray and dark. Back in the day, they wore a rainbow of colors. In the beginning, it's describing how Sleeping Beauty's parents want a baby so bad, and then they get a baby, and all the kingdom is super stoked for them because it's like, yay, princess, princess. So in the book, you can see all the courtiers walking up the hill, and you can see the kings and the queens' outfits, and they're so colorful. So it goes into the opening scene as everyone is coming to celebrate the birth of Princess Aurora. There's greens, there's blues, there's reds, there's pinks, there's colors that they probably didn't even have. I feel like I see outfits from different eras of medieval times, which is a little inaccurate. Later on, Prince Phillip goes to say that they're in the 14th century, and I'm assuming it's after the plague because a lot of the fashions do seem later into the 14th century, and you know, everyone isn't dying. I'm going to theorize that it takes place after the plague. Where did I just refer to my notes so I can see what I wrote? The bubonic plague was around 1347. I am assuming it takes place after that, sometime in the 14th century. I also have heard that it takes place in medieval England. You can see the courtiers walking by, and one thing that stood out to me is that the women are wearing these hats. Now, these hats did not come into style until the early 15th century. These hats are called hennin. Hennin weren't really a thing until around 1430, which was into the 15th century. You also see these black armored knights. Now, maybe it did happen, but for the most part, the most popular form of armor was called brigandine, and it wasn't made out of a full sheet of metal. It was made out of smaller sheets of metal laid on top of each other. It was a much more flexible form of armor. It was also a bit more affordable than a full body armor. The precision it takes to make a giant flat sheet of metal form to a human body, that costs money. I feel like it would have been more, you would have seen more brigandine. Inside, so you see there's tons of heraldry, and also earlier I said that it was set in medieval England. I am speculating that it might just be France as well. There's a lot of fleur-de-lis like stuff going on. It could also be possible, since it is a very fantastical and magical fantasy movie, that it's not exactly taking place in one medieval country or the other. I think Disney took an accumulation of different design characteristics from both medieval countries and they put it into one. Another inaccurate thing that I instantly see is the inside of the castle is super dark. The stone is super dark. Okay, first of all, the stone back then, it would have been lighter. If it wasn't, then they would paint over it, and they'd paint murals on top of it, and they'd have tapestries and different ornamentations to make it nice and warm and cozy, because they're humans and they don't want to live in a dungeon. The Gothic architecture is on point though. A big misconception a lot of people have about medieval times and medieval forms of lighting is that they used torches for everything. Never mind the giant pile of ashes that were left behind. Never mind that it burnt away in like a few seconds. That's an over exaggeration, but like 10 minutes or something, I don't know. It would not last that long. Something that I saw that I really like in the background, you can see candelabras. They had candelabras up the wazoo. The burn rate of the candles was much slower than the torches, and it didn't leave a big mess. They used candles, candles, candles. You see the king and the queen, and everyone's excited to see the baby. We are going to be dissecting King Stefan. No, not like that. Ew. This is him in the movie. So he's got long hair, he's got like this goatee beard thing and mustache. He's got like this nice like black and yellow tunic, and he's got Krakow shoes or paulaines. I'd like to say I like the choice of color for him. I like the gold and black aesthetic, although the yellow does seem pretty light, and royalty liked their colors very bright and deep because they can afford very rich colors. Black was most definitely a color for nobility, and for most of the Middle Ages, black, like jet black, was not a doable color. It always came out more gray. Earlier in the medieval era, they used iron gold ink, and that created that more gray color. As time moved on, we're going into the 14th century, the science of making black dye improved and nobility wanted it. So King Stefan is wearing a very regal color. I changed his light yellow robe, part of his robe, to more of a gold. His outfit is more like a tunic, and by then they were becoming a bit more fitted. He probably would have had more of a coat hardy look. So I looked up medieval facial hair and I couldn't find much. I found something about a book that monks wrote, but I couldn't find much on facial hair of kings. I looked up which kings were around in medieval England and France at the time, and they had facial hair and they were very beardy. So instead of a goatee, I added a bit more hair. I also gave him a little of these little caps because covering your head back then was really important for women and men. Alright, the other king, he walks in. Philip's dad. First mistake. The poofy King Henry VIII sleeves. This is not the Tudor era, and they did not have these poofy sleeves yet. So I took those off of him. He also had a goatee. I gave him a full beard as well. Also has these little dinky shoes. He's wearing ballet flats. Like these are Tinkerbell shoes. More accurately, he would have been wearing the really super coming into style Krakow shoes. Those are the kinds of shoes that have a long boy. These shoes were known to get up to 42 inches, and they'd even have chains on their stockings to keep the ends of the shoes up so they wouldn't flop and trip over their shoes. So in this picture, I also lightened up the walls of the castle, and I added a little tree mural. This is a picture I found of an actual mural back then. Stefan's queen. She also is in the beginning of this movie. You are introduced to her. I actually don't know her name. If I look up her name later, future me, put it down below so we can know. First thing I noticed was her hot pink dress. They didn't have hot pink back then, and spoiler alert, this is going to apply to our main character's dress as well. They didn't have pink back then, really, especially not hot pink. That didn't come until a few centuries later. It wasn't impossible to make pink. If anything, they would probably have taken a red dye and then left it in the fabric in the dye bath for like a short amount of time and then do no over dyeing, just try to get like a lighter shade of red. Plus she's a queen and very deep bright colors were very in style, so I noticed the colors of her dresses are a little muted, like the purple, so I made her undergirdle a very deep royal purple. Purple, by the way, was made from a shellfish at the time. Due to sumptuary laws, only royalty could wear purple. Although there were peasants who broke this rule, but they got around it by not using the shellfish dye. It came out a different shade of purple than the royal shellfish purple. So I replaced the pink overdress with the burgundy red surcoat. I also gave her a little shift. Everyone wore a shift back then, men, women. It was a linen undergarment. I also noticed her headpieces. She's wearing a veil, which is very good. Veils were important, especially for married women. But she's not wearing a wimple. I updated her a bit and gave her something called a barbette, which is like a chin strap, and then the veil over top. Historically, at this time, women wanted to look like eggs. They often plucked their eyebrows and shaved back or plucked their hairlines. So for the queen, I lightened her eyebrows a bit and I made her forehead more, yeah. All right, time for the bad fairy we all know and love, Maleficent. Maleficent makes her appearance at the beginning of the movie. She was not invited to the party and she is not happy about it. And she makes it very clear because she curses the baby. I don't quite, she's very much fantasy. Maleficent is very much fantasy. Number one, them horns. Number two, the green skin. I don't know how historically accurate I can get with this. Instead of this giant robe thing, which is fabulous by the way, this awesome black, purple, and hot pink lined robe that just flows and is giant and she takes up space, I think that's not accurate. So I'm gonna just give her more of a surcoat look, and she's got like a black kirtle underneath and a black surcoat over top. For her horns, I replaced them with a crespin. It was a form of headdress where they made it look pointy and they had the veil like go down like that. She is wearing all black. You know how expensive that would have been back then? I also changed her skin color from green to a more realistic hue. Oh, I have a theory now. It's right after the plague, right? So she had the plague, but she survived, but it left her with this like off green skin and yellow eyes, and that's why nobody invited her, because they're afraid like she might give people the plague, so she's shunned now, and she's like, no, I don't have the plague anymore, you should have invited me. But people didn't invite her. Oh my god, it's a theory. Alright, so she curses the baby like anybody would do. The king burns all the spinning wheels in the kingdom. Alright, let's get to the fairies. First of all, they're fairies, not historically accurate. A lot of people believed in fairies back then. They fly in with their frilly petticoats, not a thing. They did not have frilly petticoats like that back then. They had layers of skirts for sure, lots of wool because they were going through a mini ice age and they needed some warmth. The amount of frills that they have isn't accurate. Also, Flora has bangs. No bangs, Flora. Got rid of Flora's bangs. Fauna kind of has Edwardian hair. They're trying to figure out what to do and how to help the king and queen and their baby. So first of all, I noticed like these little witch hats. Maybe it's supposed to be a symbol because they're magical and maybe they're connected with witches somehow. Those weren't a thing, but there were these kind of pointy hat things. These hat things were called bicockets. So I replaced those random witch hats with some bicockets. I also changed their outfits because they have the front that looks like they have almost a robe a la francais look where there's like an overlay and there's an opening in the middle, and they didn't have that. It was just like one skirt back then. I gave them the wimples. For the colors, I'm assuming because they are magical or they are affiliated with royalty that they wear such bright in-your-face colors. Again, they're magical, so they could even just whip up some magic and do that. I gave them more like a coat hardy look, and I gave them the buttons that go down. Medieval people were all about the buttons. Also, I noticed in the scene they have tea with the tea set. Again, they're magical. Maybe they know how to time travel, but tea really wasn't a big thing in Western Europe, especially England, until the 1630s. Porcelain tea sets probably were not around yet. Chalices, people, and they had some beautiful chalices in that little box they shrunk down into. Look at that. And the fairies pull together and they create a plan to save Aurora. Main character energy. They go into the night and steal the baby away. They take Aurora to this adorable cottage for 16 years. All you cottagecore people, watch this movie again. You'll love it. I believe it's a woodcutter's cottage. Inside is adorable. The walls, the little drawers, oh my god. We're gonna be talking about the fairies' costumes now. Again, Flora has bangs. I got rid of those. Fauna looks like she's got some sort of Edwardian hair. No. They all need veils and wimples. Modest women of the day would wear veils and wimples. So I added those. They're little like hoods and veils that they did had. They were really strange looking, and I replaced them with some actual veils and the hoods. Some really cute Leary pipe hoods with like the little pipe on the end. Like, I'm sorry, but they're little vest things. I got rid of them. Again, a lot of their costumes seem like they're from the 18th century with like the jackets that they have. I added longer sleeves. I added I made them into coat hardies. Flora's dress is like very form-fitting. Like, she looks like Joan from Mad Men, like ooh la la. I got rid of that. Gave her a long, like, ankle-length coat hardy. And also, again, their shoes are not accurate. Like, no heels. No heels, please. And I gave them the Krakow Colin shoe. The long boy shoes. Give them pointy flats. I gave them some aprons, too. Some really cute smocked aprons, which were also very popular. Alright, so we're gonna get to Briar Rose. The leading lady herself, who does not act like a leading lady. She doesn't have much personality. You guys are gonna hate me. You guys are gonna think me as a horrible person.
No little black vest.
I'm sorry, no little black vest. They didn't have those. All you cottagecore, royal core people out there, incorporate it into your closets, but Briar Rose should not incorporate it into hers because she is a medieval lady and they didn't have bustiers. Also, that like little collar thing, very 1950s. Also, headbands, very 1950s. Overall, the whole silhouette of her outfit is nothing to do with medieval times. First, I put her hair up in braids because she is a lady. So I gave her like those cute little braids. I gave her a veil. Younger unmarried women did not have to wear the veil, but I'm going to give her the veil. Maybe she just feels like not being perceived today. She's going barefoot here. She's going barefoot, which is another thing. Why are you going barefoot when you're walking through the woods? I slapped some wool stockings on that lady and some shoes with the little straps instead of the pantyhose that she seems to have had because her legs were darker than the rest of her skin. The dress, I gave her a shift instead of the little neck ruff, and then over top of that I gave her kirtle, and I just kept it that gray color from the rest of her skirt. She is technically supposed to be a peasant. They were colorful back then, and they did find ways to incorporate more colors even in peasants' clothing, but since this is based off of her already existing outfit, I kept with the gray tone. It keeps with that going barefoot through the forest thing, even though that sounds horrible. Oh my god, all the twigs and rocks in my toes. Ugh. Squirrel poo, for one. I gave her a little belt to carry her little satchel of like things of whatever she needs. I don't know what she has in there. Maybe she has like a personality in there. I said it. So she also has this purple shawl thing. Super inconvenient. I know she's not like hardworking, but she's going out to pick berries, right? So let's say like she She harvests food on a day-to-day basis. This thing is gonna get everywhere. It's gonna get in her way. So I turned that purple shawl into a cute little hood. Also, the bangs. Not historically accurate, but adorable. But no bangs, I got rid of them. You got a middle part, baby. You got a middle part. And gave her the forehead. She also has really dark eyebrows for her hair color, so I lightened those babies up. And she has a very deep pink lipstick. Got rid of that too. They did not have makeup back then. Yeah, that's Briar Rose. All right, now we're going to get into Forest Phillip. Forest Phillip is an interesting man. He is a prince by day and a prince by night, and I guess he decides to wander off into the forest alone with no party. Where is his party? He's a prince. He's a very important person, and he's just wandering through the woods alone? Yeah, he's riding his horse through the woods, and he's wearing a pretty decent outfit. The first thing I noticed is the hat. He's wearing that bicocket hat, and it's very cute with the feather. A+ to you, Phillip, for that awesome hat. Also on his head, his haircut. Not historically accurate, by the way. I changed that to this style of haircut. It totally escaped me what this haircut is called, but it's like shaved from the bottom half, and it's like just like a short bowl cut. A big thing that stood out, boots. No boots, please. They didn't have boots. Maybe they were trying to make it seem more masculine. Again, he would have been wearing the Krakau's, the long boy shoes. They did get the tights right. He's wearing tights throughout this movie. And they also had these parts of the pants called cod pieces. He's usually wearing this tunic thing, and I shortened that up a bit to make it more like a doublet. He's got this really weird like shirt. Like the tunic is like a little mini dress, honestly, and he's got this black shirt underneath. First of all, his shift would not have been black. It would have been white. All underthings were white back then. I made his tunic into more of Gambeson armor. Gambeson is a padded defensive jacket worn as armor. It's stiffened with horsehair, so it's pretty much a super sturdy and durable quilt. His colors are not princely. He would be wearing some brighter colors, but in the movie, Aurora isn't supposed to know he is a prince. So maybe he's pretending to be a peasant. Also, instead of his cloak being center closing, I made it side closing. So the animals steal his clothes when he falls into the river. He's got a very cute relationship with his horse, by the way. Blah, blah, and they meet, and they sing, and they dance, and they fall in love. A whole bunch of stuff happens. The fairies tell Aurora that she's actually a princess. She's like, wait, what? But, no. And they're like, yes, and you have to marry Prince Phillip. And she's like, wait, what? No. I met this other guy. And they're like, wait, what? No. And she's like, no. And she take her to the castle, and she's very sad in her little hood, and she's walking sad. And leave her alone, and Maleficent gets her. And then meanwhile, while this is all happening, Prince Phillip comes to their cottage. Instead of seeing Briar Rose, he sees Christian Grey's dungeon. The fairies, again, pulling this whole movie while Princess Aurora is asleep and Prince Phillip is captured. They go to save Prince Phillip. And they say, hey, Phillip, look what we got. And they use their magical fairy powers to whip him up a sword and a shield. He gets on his horse, and the fairies do everything for him. Maleficent's henchmen shoot arrows at Phillip. They use their magical powers to turn the arrows into flowers. The sword and the shield that they gave him pretty much do nothing for this part. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't also give him Gambeson and Brigadine. I know that like it was on the spot and they're like, here's a sword, here's a shield, let's go. If he were going into battle, he would have his padded Gambeson underneath and his Brigadine armor over it. I made the colors a lot more princely. He's wearing a deep blue Gambeson and a burgundy red Brigadine. Another historical inaccuracy, his sword and his shield. He's got a two-handed long sword in one hand. How strong is that arm? Like, I'm impressed. Realistically, he would not be able to carry the shield and a long sword in one hand. If he's going to have the shield, he's going to need a shorter one-handed sword. The next scene that you see, Princess Aurora and Prince Phillip entering the ballroom. You can see Aurora's pretty blue dress. For her blue dress, first I got rid of the pointy shoulders. I don't know what the pointy shoulders were. I also again put her hair up in the braids, and I also put like this nice gold netting. I gave her a barbette this time, the little chin strap. Her crown, I noticed that it's a lot more like a tiara in the movie. I don't think they would have been shaped quite like this, so I gave it more of like a symmetrical look and gave it some more in the back. Got rid of her necklace because it didn't seem I'd never seen a necklace like that. I gave her a modesty piece as well. Usually had something sheer. For her dress, I got rid of those weird pointy things on the hips. I gave her an undergirdle, and you can see that from the lighter blue sleeves. She's got the little buttons on her wrists. Her coat hardie is a bit darker blue, and it has gold embellishments. I also gave her these things called tippets, which were really popular. They liked the long sleeve look, but they didn't actually make them into actual sleeves. So we all know Sleeping Beauty's dress changes colors because the fairies can't decide which color. Pink, blue, pink, blue, pink, pink, blue. And we're going to talk about how pink wasn't really that much of a thing back then, at least not the hot pink that Flora makes her dress. But they did have these two colored coat hardies back then, and I feel like that's a really good alternative. I feel like that's a really good interpretation of this color changing dress where it has two colors. So for this one, I made one side a very deep, rich blue, which was very popular for royals at the time, and the other side, instead of a hot pink, which was not available back then, I used a deep red. I'd like to think there would have been gold embellishments, and maybe it was like a damask silk, and did have some pink dresses back then. You can see them in some pictures. They had some pink fabrics. I think they used red dyes and they just didn't make it a very deep color. So they don't have a hot purpley hot pink. They had a more muted light red toned pink. For the heck of it, I did a pink dress. So it's a lot more muted in color. I'd like to think that it was silk with gold embellishments, and she's so cute. So she's walking down the stairs with Phillip, and for Phillip's costume, originally he had puff sleeves. It's not the Tudor dynasty, so I got rid of the puff sleeves. I made it all a dark blue, and I'd like to imagine it's all dark blue velvet. And I did make his sleeves long, which was fashionable. I also gave him this form of a leery pipe hat. This hat originated as a hat that was very popular, a lot of peasants wore, and it is called a chaperon. I went ahead for our little sweet friend Fauna's sake. Whilst the other two sisters, Flora and Merryweather, were fighting over whether the dress should be pink or blue, and I made it green. I took inspiration not only from her color palette, but from this portrait. I used the deep green, the lighter green, and then like this deep teal. That was if she was historically accurate. I would really like to do more Disney movies. If you like this video, like and subscribe.